It's Natalie G. Winters hosting today, Monday, July 8th in the year of our Lord 2024. If you haven't picked up by now, I'm back in Florida. You can see the beautiful set. You guys always ask if these palm trees are real or CGI animated. They're not real, in fact. They're fake. They're animated. Shout out to the Palm Beach-based crew for making that. Other things that apparently are fake that we need to get into are ballots and the way the Democrats are trying to steal this election. How's that for a segue? It used to be massive, right? Vote by mail-in ballots, that whole rigged system that they pushed in 2020. But now it's kind of blatantly in your face, whether they're pushing it through USAID, importing massive numbers of illegal invaders, also conveniently signing them up to vote just as they cross the United States border, and you can guess who they'll be voting for. Probably not the candidates that's pushing mass deportations, if you ask me. But the other way that they're doing it, blatantly in your face, is by toying and tinkering with election laws. In the case of the great state of Washington, apparently you don't even have to be a resident there anymore. They recently scrapped, I think, something like a 30-day residency requirement to sign up to register to vote there. Just wild stuff. Here's the mantra of the war room. Only American citizens should vote in America's elections, not illegal aliens and not dead people and not people who are too young and not people who shouldn't be registered to vote. Now, Joe Kent knows this issue all too well. He's, of course, running for Congress out there. I think he's going to win. I know the War Room Posse has his back. He joins us now. Joe, I would love to get your thoughts and also sort of in more granular detail walk through what exactly the legality is behind this decision, but particularly the residency requirement aspect. Am I wrong? Am I overstepping my boundaries to call this, blatantly clear as day, just how they're trying to play with electoral outcomes?
You're spot on. I mean, look, Washington already has really bad election laws. We do mass unsolicited mail-out voting. You cannot vote in person in our state, unfortunately. There's supposed to be a 30-day residency requirement before you can register to vote and vote. What's happened here in the last month is we've had our Secretary of State and our Attorney General, who's also running for governor right now and is actually worse than Jay Inslee, if you can believe that. The AG and the Secretary of State have pushed forward a consent decree that allows people to register to vote the same day that they move to Washington State. So basically on election day up to 8 p.m., you can register to vote simply by providing an address that somehow proves that you now have residency here in Washington State, and then you can vote with an absentee ballot. Short of the 30-day window, you can receive a full-on ballot. Now, this is completely unconstitutional. It's against the Washington State Constitution, but Bob Ferguson, our AG / governor candidate, and the Secretary of State, they have pushed this through with a unconstitutional consent decree. So they want people to be able to flock here right as the polls are closing, register to vote, and to vote. They've also done everything that they can to erode signature verification. And signature verification is already a very, very flawed system when you're talking about unsolicited mail-out ballots. However, they're trying to erode signature verification and now the residency requirement. Now, like I said, this is all completely unconstitutional. The Washington State Republican Party is all over this. They're going to be filing some injunctions to attempt to prove that the consent decree is unconstitutional, so this doesn't go into effect. However, the clock is not on our side. There's a reason why Ferguson waited until the last minute to try and push this through. The ballots for the primary election are going to be mailed out here probably in the next 2 weeks or so, and then right after that, they're going to start printing the ballots for the general election. So we've got a very, very short timeline right now to get this halted to retain any degree of election integrity in an already very flawed system.
They always seem to wait till the 11th hour, especially when it comes to all of their lawfare attacks. And I think it's valid to view what they're doing in terms of electioneering and election laws as just another arrow in the quiver when it comes to the lawfare that they're conducting, not just against President Trump, but of course, people like Stephen K. Bannon, people like Peter Navarro. I think it's even fair to look at the pandemic and all the regulations that they rolled out in 2020 as sort of the opening salvo, right, of their lawfare tactic to influence the outcome outcome of elections. I'm just curious, do you think that a lot of these reactions that we're seeing, right, the kind of really drilling down and trying to manipulate artificially the outcome of elections, at least from sort of the legal standpoint, do you think that in some ways this shows just how panicked and frightened Democrats are? Feel free to bring up your opponent cases, in particular, but do you think that this shows that they're on the back foot?
As far as policies go, look, the Democrats know that they have nothing to run on right now, and all of their lies are being exposed. I mean, my opponent, she presents herself as a blue dog Democrat, but then she votes in lockstep with the Biden administration. She voted for the wide open southern border. Right after she did that, she came back to the district and said, look, no one stays awake at night worrying about the southern border. Fentanyl deaths spiked in our district. And over the last year, she's seen the polling, she's seen the backlash. And so now here we are, just a couple months away from the election. And she's saying that, oh, I'm standing up to Joe Biden against the border. She was one of the first Democrats to come out against Biden after the debate and say, whoa, hey, we're probably going to lose to Donald Trump now, and really distancing herself from all of Joe Biden's policies. But her and every single Democrat have voted for these lock, stock, and barrel. The economy is another major issue. What the Democrats have done to the economy, they can't run from. Every time people go to fill up their gas tank, every time they go to the grocery store, they feel the effects of this out of control spending that my opponent, Marie Perez, and every Democrat have supported. So really right now, it doesn't matter how much they try and distance themselves from Joe Biden. So they're back to their old tricks, the same thing they did in 2020. They get really, really up in arms when we say things like, oh, the election was stolen or we have problems with the voting. But they're really quick to say, hey, we fortified it. And that's exactly what they're doing right now here in Washington state, a state where the voting system is already heavily in their favor. They're in such a panic that now they want to register any random person that comes in up till 8 p.m. on election day, blatantly going against the Washington state constitution. So all of that, along with just their typical politics of personal destruction, attacks, calling us racist, calling us, xenophobes and whatnot for wanting to secure our own border, that just speaks to how they are well aware of the fact that they have nothing to run on. Because when we talk about issues, when I get out there and I talk with people who don't consider themselves Republicans, conservatives, who might not even like President Trump, when I talk about securing the border, when I talk about getting our financial situation under control, easing inflation, protecting our kids. I mean, my Democrat opponent was really quick to say, oh, I don't want anything to do with, these social issues. But then she voted to put biological men into women's dressing rooms, women's locker rooms, and to compete against women on the athletic field. She'll never talk about it, but she voted that way. So these guys have nothing to talk about. Conservatives, Republicans, we can talk about the issues. We have solutions for these problems. All these guys have is tricks, election fortification, ad hominem attacks, and then basically just outright lies. So I think we're winning in terms of messaging and policy, of course, but we've got to stay really, really diligent. No matter how much Biden implodes, no matter how much the Democrats implode, these guys are very sophisticated. And if the Democrats are good at anything, it is rallying and closing ranks and coming up with ways to come out on top, because they do control a lot of levers of power, especially in states like Washington.
Well, I mean, of course they have nothing to run on. And I think, frankly, that is one of the, largest driving forces right now, why you're seeing, like I said, Democrats being on the back foot when it comes to Joe Biden and his cognitive decline. I don't really know if I want to use that term, but when you look at his mental state and how the media has been covering it up for so long, it was because they didn't think they actually needed a candidate, right, or anything to run on. They were banking on lawfare working. They were banking on election fraud and being able to electioneer their way to victory. And I think the real tell of that is not only in the debate. I think Joe Biden only said the phrase convicted felon once, right? They were planning on being able to hammer that, but they know it wasn't cutting through with the American people. If anything, it was turning more people into Trump supporters. And frankly, anytime you hear Joe Biden give a rambling, incoherent interview now, despite, I don't even think they're actually drilling him to say convicted felon and to bring up the lawfare stuff, because I'm sure if they were, he'd be bringing it up in some, convoluted way. But I think they know that that's not working. And I think that's why they're scrambling now. They realize they have nothing to run on. They're villainizing and demonizing Project 2025. That's basically the only thing that they can come up with. We'll get into that later. But I want to go back to something that you brought up, right? Because I think it's an interesting sort of juxtaposition between how they're criticizing Biden's debate performance and Trump's performance is sort of a broader reflection, right, in terms of the way the regime is going to come after Biden versus Trump, right? With Biden, they're, oh, it's a condition or is it a symptom of something bigger? But with Trump, it's, oh, he was spreading misinformation. He was spreading disinformation, right? All these little ways that they're trying to sort of push back on what I would say is the truth. I'm sure you would probably agree with me. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But when you see them starting to roll out these sort of Praetorian Guard, right, tactics to kind of silence the American people, to instill and intimidate them with fear, I'm inclined to bring up a story that I wanted particularly to have you on to discuss. Reports that the New York National Guard are currently testing and playing around, mock deploying basically pocket-sized drones. Now, it's unclear what exactly they're using it for. The New York Post was the first to report this, but they can, exist in the air for about 24 minutes. They've previously been used in Afghanistan. They've been used by the 82nd Airborne Division, but they're now being used by the New York National Guard. Like I said, under what purview, it sort of remains unknown. As someone who has, keen insight into what is not just the military-industrial complex and all that, but just the way that they weaponize it against the American people. I'd love your thoughts on this story.
I think there's nothing that the Democrats won't do right now to distract from how their entire narrative is imploding. I mean, I think the shapeshift we're going to see here really soon, that we're already kind of seeing, is that, hey, all these horrible Democrat policies that they can't run away from anymore, that the American people are dealing with every single day, well, that's just because of Joe Biden. Joe Biden's kind of old, he's decrepit, we're going to kind of switch him out, and then you're going to see the Democrats step forward, but we're going to hold them accountable. We're going to say, yeah, you guys can blame Biden all day long, but all of you have voted for and supported these policies. So it really doesn't matter who you have at the top of the ticket. These aren't Biden policies. These are Democrat policies. And then we move on to the next more dangerous phase, which is the Democrats pulling some sort of, either manipulating the elections like they're doing in Washington state, like we just discussed, or some form of an emergency. And look, with the tensions on the world stage right now, with the fact that we've had at least 12 million illegals come into our country, we've already identified terrorist networks that have infiltrated the country. There's been probing activities that have taken place by terrorist organizations on military facilities. We've got infrastructure issues here. It's not too far-fetched for the Democrats to declare some form of an emergency, especially in blue states. And look, the war on terror, as it wound down, it really returned home here. We've seen that with the Patriot Act. We've seen this last Congress, my Democrat opponent, and unfortunately some Republicans as well, vote against actually requiring a warrant to surveil Americans. And what people have to realize is a lot of these really impressive technologies that we see deployed overseas, this drone technology, the ability to hunt humans, that isn't just taking place anymore on foreign battlefields. Our military industrial complex, our national security apparatus, they have these capabilities here. And so these small pocket-sized drones and other sophisticated technologies, those could easily be used against the American people if there isn't proper oversight. And in particularly in cases of blue states that are going to work heavily with the Biden administration, I think we've got to be really, really wary, and we've got to keep a sharp eye on this when they declare some form of an emergency. We really have to be the vanguard of the American people's civil rights. And that's something traditionally that the left used to be, I think, a little bit better about. But in the last 20 or so years, we've seen a major shift, especially with President Trump, in the way that we've seen the federal bureaucracy, and in particular the National Security State and the Justice Department, weaponized against conservatives or anybody who really speaks out against the regime's narrative. Obviously, Steve Bannon isn't with us today because he's in prison. Same with Peter Navarro. So the potential for the national security state to really overstep their bounds, the precedence has already been set. They've been doing this now consistently for years. So these technologies that at one point in time we thought existed only overseas to be used against enemies of our nation, we've just got to realize that they are back here. They can and they are being deployed against us. And we've got to be really, really aware of that going into this election season.
Yeah, besides Joe Biden's political future, I wonder what else they're discussing on those calls with all the Democrat governors, right, in those blue states. They're probably getting ready to prep for the next so-called emergency, or my favorite word, polycrises. That's the World Economic Forum's quite redundant term for all of this stuff happening. Just to sort of expand on that a little bit, though, I am curious. I obviously track pattern recognition here in the War Room. It's our North Star, along with signal, not noise. but sort of the resurgence of the words like pandemic and public health. In this case, I think bird flu seems to be the one that they're leading with. And I will say, since Joe Biden's abysmal debate performance in the news cycle, I've started seeing all the articles pop up again saying that another pandemic is likely, and this time it's going to be bird flu, and the death or the mortality rate's 50%. Again, another virus that Anthony Fauci is funding gain-of-function experiments on, but we'll save that for another episode. But from the kind of biological side of things when it comes to election interference, make no mistake, they play information warfare, they will play biological warfare, warfare too. Just curious your thoughts on how you think that kind of pandemic narrative is going to evolve, or if you think they're going to double down on the censorship. Again, we won't hold you to any of your predictions, but I'm just curious, what you think their kind of go-to playbook is going to be.
I'm sure right now there are rooms full of Democrat operatives that are running scenarios on pretty much everything. And look, the pandemic, that worked out really well for them in 2020. So why wouldn't you build it into your contingencies? I mean, I think we'd be fools to think that they'll never try that again, or that we won that narrative. Unfortunately, I mean, if you're flying anywhere in the United States, you're still going to see a lot of people wearing their mask. I mean, it's become almost a cult-like religion. There is that mass formation psychosis, especially if the Democrats roll this out and immediately those of us on the right say, hey, this is another scam, we're being lied to. A lot of people aren't going to have a logical reaction to that. They're going to say, oh no, my team is supporting this new pandemic, this new lockdown, this new crackdown by the national security state because of whatever they say the pandemic is. Bird flu, Russian disinformation, take your pick. I mean, they're probably testing all these different messages right now to see which one has the best chance of really penetrating and sticking. But I think the lesson for those of us on our side of the football is that there's nothing that these guys won't try. The pandemic was already effective. It was very, very effective for them in 2020, even if it's only half as effective in 2024. If they were to roll it out as an October surprise or a little bit later on in the election season, it would still work out in their favor, and it would be part of their fortification strategy. Because again, it all goes back to the Democrats have absolutely nothing to run on in terms of substance, in terms of policy, in terms of providing a better future for the American people. So everything going forward is literally going to be tricks, ruses, and ploys, and psyops.
Well, the only thing that they can run on, and you're always great at pointing out your opponent's record on this, is what is it? Open borders, right? Massive fentanyl overdoses and deaths, just absolute destruction and disarray in every corner of the earth, from Ukraine to the Middle East, to, of course, most importantly, here at home, the inflation with the dollar, de-dollarization happening. I'm just curious, using your opponent as sort of a microcosm with all of that, obviously, that huge NATO summit's going on right now in Washington, D.C. Usually that city's pretty full of globalists. I'm very glad I don't live there, because I don't think I'd be able to handle D.C. during a NATO summit week. That's like the absolute worst. But just kind of your thoughts on the desperate attempts and efforts to. It's very interesting if you follow the reporting on it. They're trying right after the debate, they sent Blinken to kind of do a mea culpa tour, right, globally, to say, oh no, we're giving you guys results. Like, Joe Biden has done so well. He's performed excellently, superbly on the global stage, which frankly shows you where their priorities are, right? That's first and foremost their most pressing concern. We do make sure the global community views Biden as strong, not the American people. But just your thoughts on sort of, as we're amidst this kind of NATO summit, where we stand on Ukraine. They're already pushing to kind of appoint a new Ukraine czar within the confines of NATO.
It's really interesting. I mean, obviously, a very dangerous ploy that the Biden administration has really been banking on is that, hey, our country is at war. We have a crisis going on. We have to support Ukraine. Otherwise, Vladimir Putin is going to, be in Kiev, in the next month, and then he's going to take over all of Europe. That nonsensical line. But really, that's losing a lot of its effectiveness. I think the American people, and in particular, a lot of people in Europe, are seeing that, look, Ukraine what's happened there has been absolutely tragic. There's been been a generation of Ukrainian men that have been killed. The Ukrainians are running out of bodies, so it doesn't really matter how many more weapon systems or how many more aid packages we send over there. Their only ploy right now is to get NATO more deeply and deeply involved. And we saw Biden floating the idea of putting contractors, boots on the ground, which really is just fancy terminology for saying U.S. personnel directly engaged in combat. They've also talked about NATO advisors. So NATO and the national security military industrial blob, they really want us to get deeply involved into NATO in a way that the next president, President Trump, couldn't undo it. That's why you're seeing these 10-year deals being signed, all these different impeachment traps they've been building into the aid packages. And so I think the Biden administration is very dangerously gambling on saying, hey, we've got to continue the escalations inside of Ukraine because we're banking on the American people saying that, hey, this is a wartime president and we're going to reelect him. And I think the Biden administration right now, as desperate as they are and as desperate as the Democrats are, they don't see escalations as a bad thing. Again, this is why just 2-3 weeks ago, Biden authorized, well, not Biden, whoever's running the show there, authorized U.S. missiles to be shot inside of Russia. I mean, this is something that a lot of the Cold Warriors who prevented us from getting into a nuclear exchange before, they would have said is an absolute red line. They'd be spinning around in their graves. So I think this is yet another scenario where the Democrats could create a crisis. And this is very dangerous because at the end of the day, this isn't just playing around with one election. This is playing around with potentially a nuclear exchange. Russia has already basically said that they're not messing around. Russia said they want to negotiate, they want to get to the negotiating table, and they want to end the conflict. I know all the haters will say, oh, yeah, but Putin said he wanted to keep all of his terrain. But, hey, at the end of the day, he came in with his high bid. That's a time to get to the table and come in with our bid and start the dialogue and de-escalate the tensions. But at the same time, Putin has also deployed Russian naval forces off the eastern seaboard. He's doing the same thing against the UK. So we're in very, very dangerous times. And I don't think the children that run the Biden administration understand how dangerous this could get. This isn't just an election year ploy. This could result in a nuclear exchange. But we've got absolutely no leadership in the White House and the National Security Council right now. And these people are playing with fire. So I think we're in very dangerous times as the Democrats get more desperate, as NATO gets more desperate, as Ukraine gets more desperate. What we're seeing at the same time, though, is you're also seeing China and Russia looking at ways that they can de-escalate. And so China, I think, could really put us in checkmate here if she ends up negotiating a ceasefire in Ukraine while we in the West continue to push escalation. She then emerges along with BRICS, with everything that's happening with our currency, as the true global leader, all because the Democrats were so full of hubris and taking money from the military industrial complex. So we're in very dangerous, unprecedented times, and we have no leadership in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, lobbyists, special interests, the military-industrial complex aside, I think the largest beneficiary of some, World War III type crisis starting would be the electoral chances of Joe Biden to become president, not again, but for the first time, right? We know what we think of that and the legitimacy of the 2020 election here in the War Room. Joe Kent, thank you for staying with us for so long. We're always happy to have you in the War Room. If people want to follow you, support the campaign, stay up to date with everything you're working on, if you have any upcoming events, let us know where we can go and find all that.
Yeah, please go to joekentforcongress.com. The primary ballots are going to get sent out here in about 2 weeks. Starting on Friday, we're basically barnstorming. I'll be doing 2 to 3 events every single day. Go to joekentforcongress.com. Anything that you can donate is going to help me flip this seat. Only lost by less than a percentage point last time. Outspent 6-1. So $5, $10, $15, anything from the posse, always greatly appreciated. joekentforcongress.com. Thank you, Natalie.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think
Absolutely.
We have Peter McElvoy. I think if we do, we have him up. I'd love to discuss all things France and the election that just went down there. Now, Peter, we only have a few minutes, but I'm going to hold you through the break. But I'd love if you could give the audience just a little bit of a rundown, sort of who you are and just your thoughts on what happened in France.
Of course, Natalie, it's great to be with you. And I run Hearts of Oak at Hearts of Oak UK on Twitter, and we've had Maureen on a couple of weeks ago. We've had Steve on numerous times, and many that were in posse. But it is the election in France. I'll be talking about this on lots of podcasts today. And although it may be a negative result, there's a lot of silver linings to the cloud. So let me give you the update. Obviously, Macron, French president, declared a snap general election, hoping to catch Marine Le Pen National Rally off guard. They were able to group and they won the first round, went off to the second round, which was on Sunday. And in that, although the National Rally won the popular vote with 37%, they got one of the fewest seats. And it's a weird part of the French electoral system that despite winning 37%, they only got 140 seats. And the grouping of the communists, the Greens, the socialists, who were put together to stop anyone but Le Pen, basically, they were pulled together at the last moment within days. And they dropped a lot of their candidates to run a single candidate against Marine Le Pen. They got 25% and yet got 180 seats. So Marine Le Pen, 37%, 140 seats, and 25% got 180. So it seems in France that the worse you do, the better you do. And of course, Emmanuel Macron came third with 25%, and he got 159 seats. So it's a weird mix of these groups on the left. They've tried to run an anti-Marine Le Pen ticket, and she's been hugely popular. Remember, if you go back to the election.
Peter, I'm going to hold you right there because we've got to jump to break, but I want you to continue with that after the break. And more importantly, how all of this, what the lessons we can take here in the United States with our upcoming elections, whether from the election security side of things or just plain pure politics. We'll be right back, joined in studio by none other than Captain Maureen Bannon, who's going to give you an update on Steve. We'll be right back.
All this nonsense, all this spin, they can't handle the truth.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. We've still got Peter with us, followed by, like I said, Captain Maureen Bannon in studio, which is very exciting, a privilege and honor to be with her. There you go. You can see her. I guess I buried the lead. There we go. But Peter, while I still have you, before I let you go, please pick up where you left off in terms of analyzing the results, but also through the lens of what the important takeaways are ahead of our election here in the United States in November.
Well, one important takeaway you can't really fix is that we can have paper ballots, but that's a whole issue. And I know you're not going to be able to fix that before November. But what is really exciting is that I think there's a bridge that President Trump can link in with Europe they didn't have before. To me, that's one of the key takeaways. So although Marine Le Pen, although they got 37%, they are held back and they will be restricted. You've got a crazy coalition that's coming together of communists, of socialists. These are opposing blocs that have never, ever before shared a platform, and that is not going to go well. So I can see that collapsing, and you can see the panic in the French media because they're already putting hit pieces out on Marine Le Pen, who's the parliamentary leader, and Jordan Bardella, who is the president of National Rally, and they're saying there's this schism between them. They're going to fall out. Nothing can seem further from the truth. So they're trying to build this divide between them. The good news is that Marine Le Pen's gone from 87 to 140 seats. The good news is that the other parties on the right have come around Le Pen and realised actually she can win this. The other piece of good news is the European Parliament, that it's the groupings within the European Parliament that really matter, not the individual parties. And Viktor Orban, leader of Hungary, has been without a grouping after he was kicked out for opposing the EU. And he has set up a new group called the Patriots of Europe. And so far, in the last couple of days, we've had the Austrians join the Freedom Party. They're pulling top in Austria. We've had Belgian Willem Belang have joined. They have about 4 or 5 seats in the European Parliament. The Danish People's Party have joined. The Dutch Freedom Party, led by the absolutely awesome Geert Wilders, they have joined. Portugal's Chega Party have joined. Spain's Vox Party have joined. Italy's Lega Party, led by Matteo Salvini, they have joined. And who else? Marine Le Pen herself announced just hours ago they have also joined. That's on top of the Czechs, the ANO, and the expectation is the Polish Confederation grouping led by Krzysztof Bosak. They probably will be next. At the moment, they're third largest party. This could push them up to second. So there's a lot changing, huge moves, and it's the uniting of the right in the European Parliament. And that means there is a base, a landing pad for President Trump. Whenever he comes in, he will have a very favorable large grouping in the European Parliament. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from this, that despite being told that Marine Le Pen has not succeeded, 37% of the vote. This is huge. That's one thing. She has proved she's an electoral winner. She's increased the members of Parliament, the French Parliament, from 78 up to 140, 142. And thirdly, this grouping this come here, we've had 3 groupings on the right in the European Parliament. And now Viktor Orban, who is the kingmaker in Europe, is pulling that together. The other kingmaker is Giorgia Meloni, and I think she will also come into this grouping. And we will have a super group in European Parliament with parties on the right. It is perfect for President Trump getting back into the White House.
We've always said this populist movement doesn't just start or focus here in the United States. It is a global populist movement. You know, Steve has worked tirelessly to make that happen. Peter, if people want to follow you, stay up to date with everything you're working on, get the show, where can they go to do all that?
So they can, obviously, we are tonight with, or not tonight, this afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time, with Dr. Andy Wakefield, who was the first to blow the whistle on the link between vaccines and autism. He joined us. 25 years he was maligned and attacked, and he's still there holding the flag, raising the issue. That'll be tonight, today, and tomorrow we have Bastien Frimas, who works in the European Parliament. He'll be highlighting what has happened in France. That's Tuesday. Of course, you watch on War Room, on Rumble and Getter, and with us, it's at Hearts of Oak UK on Twitter.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Natalie.
Of course. Now, you guys know they always want to blame everything on climate change, even the crazy weather patterns that we're seeing happening. But all of that aside, you need a satellite phone. I think they're really cool. And Mo told me we were having Chris Hoar on. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So it's an honor to be joined by Chris Hoar of the very cool satellite phone store. So Chris, you always have the best deals. I feel like you sell out in like 15 minutes of coming on the show. If you want to let the posse know what the current deals that you're running, but why now is the time to get one.
Well, Natalie, thanks for having me on today, and nice to see Maureen there as well. Right now, what we've got in Houston is we've got 2.6 million people without power, and tens of thousands of people as a result of that without cell phone service, because these cell towers go down in these kind of storm events, and even the cell towers that have backup batteries, those batteries only last a certain amount of time, and when they're out, then the tower is down. So satellite phones work in this situation. They don't require cell towers to operate. They talk directly to the satellites in the sky, which means wherever you are on planet Earth, you can make or receive a call or send or receive a text message. All you need to do is be able to see the sky. So wherever you are, whether you're in the middle of Houston right now or you're in the middle of the ocean out on a boat, you're going to be able to make and receive a call no matter what's going on. And, look, if any of us leave the house without our cell phone, we typically turn around immediately, go back and get it, because we never want to be without communication, and we're very used to that. So being without cell phone service can be a real problem. It can be annoying, and it can also be life endangering. So satellite phones work constantly, no matter what. It doesn't matter what's going on the ground. They're always going to enable you to make and receive a call. And what we have today is we're halfway through the year, and we're starting to run low on phones. We still have about 50 of the free Inmarsat sat phones. That's with activation. These phones are normally around $1,000. We're the only company in the country that offers them for free with activation, and you can pay as little as $75 a month to get 100 minutes in and out or 100 texts. And also, Natalie, those minutes can roll over if you don't use them. So if you don't use the phone for like 3 months, then you're going to have 300 minutes available to you when you really need it.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I know the posse always loves when you're on. One more time, hit us with the link, the code, where people can go to get one, or multiple.
Yeah, they can go to SAT123.com. That's SAT123.com. Or they can call us at 941-841-0844. That's 941-841-0844.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Natalie.
Of course. Now, I'm honored, like I said, to be joined in studio by the one and only Captain Maureen Bannon. I know last time we were here with your dad, he was insistent that we were standing up,
yes,
which made for very interesting aesthetics. You know, here in the war room, aesthetics are very important.
Yes.
I'm missing my 3 pens and my button down.
I didn't even put the 3 pens on
it's
today.
It's cultural appropriation, so I don't want to go there. Maybe one day. But I know before we get into, we'll see how much time we have because I'm sure we'll want to spend a lot of time on this. The number one question that I get is, how is your dad doing? Do we have any updates? So I would love to ask you that and give you the chance to tell the posse what the latest is.
So he's doing good, everyone. He and I have been in communication. He wants the posse to know he's doing good and excited that everyone is continuing working. You know, I said this earlier in the week, he doesn't want us to sit around and sulk and miss him. He wants us to stay active and in this fight to save this country. So I've let him know that the posse hasn't skipped a beat, that the guest hosts haven't skipped a beat, and that everything's been great. And he's loving all of that, and he's doing good.
And when you say doing good, 2 questions. One, I'm sure the audience is curious. How do you know that? You know, how are you communicating with him? What's sort of the cadence of communication? And then, you know, what is he doing? And how is he staying up to date? And again, don't, overspeak if you don't want to share anything, but I'm sure the posse wants to know.
So he is able to communicate on the phone and through email. He sends lots of emails.
I hear there's no autocorrect on those.
There is no autocorrect. So sometimes you have to figure out like what they're trying to say. I feel like I've done well because I have friends that can't text correctly sometimes. So I've learned how to decipher what some words are that aren't spelled correctly. So there is no autocorrect or spell check on that, but we communicate through email. And in there, it's very regimented, and he keeping himself busy. He's reading, and through email you can't send an attachment, so you have to copy and paste articles in there. But
so are you sending him articles? Is that how he's staying up to date?
He is. So any articles that Grace and myself think that he would like, which are a ton of them, we've been sending to him through email, copy and paste.
How do you even decide? Again, for those, I'm sure you are aware when watching the show, Steve, I think maybe sleeps like 4 hours a day. He truly is reading the rest of the time. How do you even decide what to send? Did he give you any instruction? What's the calculus there?
It's kind of just based off of what we would send him before. So general headlines that we think that he would appreciate. It's a lot of articles, just some of them he's like, okay. But for the most part, he just loves getting articles and reading them. And
what news sources do they have available in prison? What can he watch? CNN or Fox?
From what I was told prior to him going in by other people that have been in federal prison before, it's usually CNN or Fox or some sort of
MSNBC. I'm sure
no,
Steve's
I'm not.
dying.
No, I don't know. I think you can change the channel in there, so I think that he might be able to. I'm
sure he's turning all the TVs away from Fox. If I have any bets, that's what he's doing.
But I do know that he was able to see the interview that Joe Biden gave the other day.
Did he have any thoughts?
He said he was going to email some thoughts, but then He didn't email them to me. I think he emailed them to someone else. But
He's cheating on you.
but he does get a chance to watch different news sources in there. There is a library. He has books. He's definitely a speed reader. So I have a feeling I will be sending more books to him. And who knows, maybe the prison library maybe he'll donate the books that he's read to the prison library so that the other inmates can read some pretty detailed books.
Hopefully there's no gender queer in that prison library or anything like that.
I'm hoping not.
Who knows? And to bring it back to you, how are you doing? I know Steve doesn't like the sappy stuff, so if you want to look down the barrel of the camera to people like Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, all those people who are putting you through hell, and I use that word in its truest sense with what they're doing to your father. What words do you have for them? Has this shaken you to your core at all, or has this made you only double, triple, quadruple down in your resolve to save this country?
I would say quadruple down in my resolve to save this country. I'm doing okay. I'm baby honey badger, so I am my father's daughter, and this isn't going to get to me. It's not getting to him. The left thinks that they're going to silence my dad by putting him in prison, and they are sorely mistaken. This will not silence him. He's able to communicate from in there, so his voice is still being heard. Yes, he's not behind the mic, but he's still being heard while he's inside. However, they think that once he gets out, this isn't going to magnify his...
There's the Streisand effect, and then there's the put Steve Bannon in prison and see what happens to your show after effect.
You think that his voice is going to get silent or softer once he gets out? It's only going to get bigger and louder. So
when you see on TV minute after minute, second after second, the only word that's in these people's vocabulary and vernacular seems to be democracy. Our democracy, fun fact, if you just input the word regime instead of democracy, everything they're saying makes a lot more sense. But when you hear that drivel coming out of MSNBC, maybe Steve's lucky that he doesn't have to watch it in prison, but does that make you mad? What do you want to say to these people when you see them drilling into your head and telling the American people that it's people like your father who are subverting democracy? Meanwhile, they're putting him in a federal prison because of his love, undying love and patriotism for this country.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. They want people to believe it's fair for both sides. It's a political witch hunt, and my dad is a political prisoner. Peter Navarro is a political prisoner. If the rules were fair across the board, you wouldn't be going after just one side of the aisle. Merrick Garland would be arrested and standing trial for contempt of Congress, but they're going after one side and not the other. And it's a political witch hunt even to go after my dad and Peter Navarro. But it's extremely frustrating for them to say that my dad and Peter are, trying to attack democracy. First off, we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy. So they clearly can't even get that right. But they're the ones that are destroying this country. We've seen that over the last 3 years. And people like my dad and Peter Navarro are patriots that are trying to save this country.
And don't you think that that's just so reflected in Steve's just pure, raw vigor that even when he's in federal prison, I would think that would make most people say, you know what, this country, I'm done. The Chinese Communist Party, their authorities, they did it right. Democracy didn't work. Constitutional republic, that didn't work. What, as his daughter, but also just as I'm sure someone who admires and respects him so much as all of the War Room posse does, I think I know it's not lost on the audience, but I talked to you and Grace. I mean, you are sending him so many articles, and I know the audience thanks you for doing that. But I've never seen someone work so hard. I mean, what is it like to be his daughter and just to have that as your role model? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is amazing, and I know I posted this on Twitter before. He is my hero. Twitter trolls have gone after that. Like, how could you have a hero?
Twitter trolls coming after you?
I know. I'm shocked. But how could you have, a traitor as a hero? And he's not a traitor. He's a patriot. He's fighting to save this country. Even 4 months inside a federal prison, he is still fighting to save this country. And I'm truly grateful to be his daughter. And he left some pretty big shoes to fill. I'm trying to fill them while he is gone.
You're doing a great job, and I don't just say that. I know the audience knows it too. You guys don't see what she does behind the scenes. I know Steve doesn't like the sappy stuff, but hey, when you get two women in the war room, that's and it's on Battleground. I know that's what you get. Maureen, we gotta jump to Mike Lindell. Do you have any closing words? I know your dad's probably gonna get the transcript of this. If you have any messages for him, feel free to get it out.
No, I just want everyone in the posse to remember, keep fighting, keep getting active. Do not sit on the sidelines. You have to stay involved to save this country. That's what my dad would want. He doesn't want people to sit on the sidelines over the next 4 months. Please get involved.
Maureen, thank you it's very rare that I get to really do a deep interview with someone, and it's an honor to be able to interview. I'd give you a hug on air, but I think your dad would somehow find a way to fire me from prison for getting that sappy, so I won't do that. Mike Lindell, if you're still with us, if you haven't hung up after watching that, I'm sure you have some wonderful pillow deals for the War Room Posse that they'd love to hear.
Absolutely. I promised Steve we would break all the records, and you guys, this is the last day for two things. One is your free American flag pillow with no purchase necessary. And the other one, this is the last airing for the premium My Pillow. This was a War Room 4th of July exclusive. As many as you want to get tonight. $19.98 for the queen, $19.98 for the king size. The original My Pillow. Get as many as you want. It's a War Room exclusive. And then we have our brand new special for this week, another War Room exclusive, our new My Mattress Topper, queen size, direct to you, regularly $249.98, $99.98. This is over 1,400 comfort pressure points on there, reliefs. In the king size, I believe there's 18,000 of them. This is the most amazing, affordable topper ever made. It's brand new. They're so awesome. I sleep on them all the time. And it was developed over these last 6 months. You guys, this is another War Room exclusive. But get your free pillow, no matter what. Get this. This will go down in history, you guys. This was just for the War Room Posse. No purchase necessary. Call the numbers if we can get the number put up on the screen there. Call my operators, you guys.
And we will Posse Pilot. Mike, we're coming up against the end of the show, so I got to let you go. But something tells me we will definitely see you soon. Maureen, you want to take us out the last minute?
So I just wanted to remind everyone, my dad, people have asked how they could support him. He wants us to support him by supporting our sponsors. So please go to birchgold.com/war room to
/ Bannon.
/ Bannon. You're
humble fact checking.
/ Bannon to get the fourth installment of the End of the Dollar Empire. So please make sure to support our sponsors. My dad would really want us to do that.
And the satellite phone store, so you can get those prison collectibles, even if you have a power outage. There you go. War Room Posse, thank you so much for hanging with us. I feel like this is like a talk show, like the view minus the propaganda. An honor to have you on. That was a fun interview. War Room Posse, I'll be back tomorrow. Like I said, I'm taking over the 6 p.m., so I will see you there. Have a good one.